All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It looks like we have some people hopping in right now, so we will give everyone a few minutes and then we will go ahead and get started. Scott, thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Mm-hmm. All right. I see some others hopping in. We'll wait just another minute or two here, and then we'll go ahead and begin. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started here? We'll let others continue to join. Let's see here. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We're excited to have you here. My name is Lauren Ladra. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at Trusted Site. We are excited to have Scott Baradell from Idea Grove here with us today. Scott is the CEO of Idea Grove, a marketing and PR firm that understands the power of trust-centered marketing. He is also the founder of TrustSignals.com, a website focused on sharing news and analysis and practical advice on what it takes to build trust with customers. Today, Scott will be sharing with us best practices for building credibility on your e-commerce site through the use of various types of trust signals. Just a couple notes before we get started. We will be recording the webinar and sharing a link in the follow-up email. We will also be sharing the slides as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A box and we will get to them at the end. So Scott, thanks for being here. We're excited to have you here. And with that, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate everyone who took the time to join today. I don't usually have an aquatic bird behind me when I'm doing a Zoom call. This is because I'm on vacation in Gulf Shores, Alabama, which does have internet. It was a little bit of a challenge to make sure that I had a secure line, but you get to, as my wife and 5 kids are at the beach, you get to hear me, and I get to take this is work. This is not a break from my family on the beach, but it's also a break from my family on the beach. So thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to talking to you guys about trust and about trust badges, trust signals, and what that means for your e-commerce site, and thinking about new ways to incorporate trust signals to bring in more customers and to make your site more successful. Okay. So a little bit about my agency. It's called Idea Grove. We're based in Dallas. We have clients in Dallas and nationwide. We have clients in other countries as well. We're focused on B2B and technology clients. We work with e-commerce brands as well. And we focus a lot on public relations, which is a really very much a trust-based business, and digital marketing, and how important it is to build trust online with your customers in order to get them to buy from you, and kind of making connections along that whole framework. We call ourselves a trust generation firm. So sometimes clients ask us for, we want good PR, or we're looking for lead generation. But what we talk about is trust generation, how important it is to secure trust before you can really do anything else in terms of building relationships with your clients or customers. So when we talk about trust badges or trust seals or trust signals, trust marks, all these terms, what do we really mean? Um, Trust signals are evidence points that inspire confidence in your brand online. And this term goes back to the very earliest days of e-commerce. I think that the first reference I saw was back in 1998, and it's become an even more relevant term today. A trust badge is one type of trust signal, and they're best known in e-commerce brands for being those seals or symbols or icons that you see on your e-commerce website that are intended to quickly establish trust. So that can be a security seal saying, hey, your data is secure, a payment assurance seal saying, hey, we accept Visa or we accept PayPal, money back guarantee, free shipping. These are all examples of trust badges that e-commerce sites have been using for years now. Examples of trust badges: security, payment, endorsement trust badges such as a Better Business Bureau badge, guarantees, free shipping. Those are 5 of the types of trust badges that are most common to see on a checkout page of a site, for example. They're also known as trust marks. These are trusted site trust marks to show you, hey, the site is secure. You can feel comfortable making a purchase from this website. Now, there's a broader palette of these that that you can use in your website. Here's an example of several. And what I wanted you guys to think about today, since I know a lot of e-commerce businesses are familiar with the concept of a trust badge like the badges I've shown you, is that really virtually all commerce is e-commerce today. And which means that we need to take a broader view of what a trust signal really is today as an evidence point that can attract people to your brand, not only on your website, but bringing people to your website in the first place. So for an e-commerce brand, thinking beyond the trust badge, you can think of the trust badge as something, particularly it's on your checkout page, as being at the bottom of the funnel, meaning someone's already come to your website and you're using a trust badge like a trusted site badge to let them know that they can feel safe making a purchase on your site. And the data shows that badges like this have a very powerful effect in terms of conversion rates. But that's for people that have already come to your website. So you've got to think about, how do I get people to find out about me? How do I get people to come to my website in the first place? And there are trust signals that can achieve that for you as well. So you can start thinking about a badge like a Better Business Bureau or a trusted site badge as being part of a continuum of signals that you're sending throughout the process of bringing people, of people learning about your brand, coming to your website, and making the decision to purchase from you. So to give you an example of thinking more broadly about trust signals, I'm working on a book called Trust Signals that's coming out in a few months. And look, I'm not a well-known person. I'm not a celebrity. So I've got to think about, as good a book as I write, no one's going to purchase it if they don't feel like it's worth their time and worth their money. So what do I need to do to convince people of that? Well, I need to send out trust signals such as putting together a biography on the book jacket that makes me look like I know what I'm talking about. Having people who are better known than me saying good things about the book on the book jacket. Getting 5-star reviews on Amazon. There's a strategy that's pretty common of trying to work pre-sales so that you can be very early on bestseller lists within Amazon to increase sales by kind of the bandwagon effect of, hey, other people have bought this book, you should too. Getting people who are well known on social media to promote your book, getting media coverage. These are all trust signals. If you think more broadly than that badge on the checkout page of your website, these are all trust signals that you're using to get people to take you seriously, consider you credible, to trust you with their money, their time, and their attention. So if we look at, beyond the trust badge, there are types of trust signals that fall into the category that I call customer validation. And these are for most e-commerce businesses. You may use some of these, you may not have thought to use them, or you may not have thought to use some of them. But I think that you have to think in terms of these being very important for you to signal that you can be trusted as a vendor to purchase from. Testimonial quotes and customer stories. So testimonial quotes are generally pretty high level. This is a great product that I've purchased. If you buy from these guys, you'll like your experience too. But customer stories or case studies are where you go into more detail, where people can find out if their specific use case is reflected by others. Client logos are important, particularly for B2B. The companies that you've have purchased from you make others feel comfortable that they can trust you with their business. Google reviews, product review sites, whether it's anything from Yelp to G2 and everything in between. If you look at the first 2 or 3 pages of Google results when someone searches for your brand, the review sites you see are generally the ones that are going to be most important for you to have a presence on and to have the kind of reviews that are going to attract people to your website. And then customer stats. If you've got a e-commerce site that has any volume in terms of people subscribing, people buying products, sharing those kind of stats on your site kind of contributes to that effect of, hey, other people like my product, you'll like it too. Now, beyond customers, those are all examples of how getting reinforcement or validation from your customers can be trust signals to potential customers that they can feel safe buying from you and that they'll have a good experience. There's other sources of third-party validation, such as coverage in the news media. This can be your local media, it can be your industry media, it can be if you're selling a product, it can be retail guides and other sources. But the point is that the source of the information has credibility, and they're lending that credibility to you by featuring you. Finally, and article placements are an example of third-party validation where you're writing about your product, you're writing about something larger, your industry. You're not selling, you're trying to be helpful. And by being accepted and being able to place that content in a third-party source that has credibility with your audience, it's also conferring credibility on your brand in the same way that media coverage would. Google visibility. Look, I mean, these days, Google is not only a search engine, it's the most important and powerful media company in the world. So ultimately, if you're not visible on Google, it's telling people that you're not very important. So you've got to figure out strategies, at least for the people that you're trying to reach, that you can achieve visibility that confers credibility from Google. Industry, business, and product awards. Awards are a great source of third-party validation. And some awards are more important than others. It's very easy to get awards from sources that There are award mills, and there are different sources of awards that maybe aren't going to be that meaningful to your customers. You have to research and understand which kind of awards and which kinds of credentials are going to be important to your customers. When you know what those are and you share those on your website, those are additional ways to get folks to feel like they'd like to purchase from you. Credentials, certifications, showing that you are qualified to do what you do, and that's going to express itself in the workmanship of your product. Professional association memberships. These are all ways to show people when they come to your website, or even before they get to your website, that you have that you're credible and that you can be trusted to buy from. So when we look at these kinds of trust signals and these kinds of trust badges that you commonly see on e-commerce sites, and we think about maybe some types of trust signals that a lot of e-commerce sites aren't taking advantage of. Some examples of these might be, these are just some that we use on my agency's own website, IdeaGrow's own website, that you could look at as being something that might be relevant for your website as well. If you're in B2B, for example, and you have business customers, showing the logos of the customers you work with or the clients you work with, these are trust badges or trust signals that you could consider including on your website. Awards, we mentioned awards. These are examples of awards that our agency has won. We put these high on our homepage, and when you click on the homepage and you click on these awards, you can see the details of these awards and how we won them. We have, for our employees, examples of credentials that they've achieved and certifications that they've achieved in order to show that our team is qualified to help you. And then this isn't from our site, but this is a good example of, we've probably all seen that kind of as seen on TV logo, but showing that your brand has been featured in various publications or in the media is an important credibility builder. And these are trust badges in the same way that a Better Business Bureau seal or a trusted site seal would be, in terms of attracting people into your site so they want to follow the path to hopefully end up purchasing from you. Now, we talk about your website is clearly the most important marketing presence that you have online. But today, the reality is, even when someone searches for your brand specifically, 70% of the people that do that search do not click through to your site. 70% of searches on Google are zero-click searches where people are finding the information they want to find from Google. They may come to your site later, but they might not. Sometimes the information they find is all they want, or it doesn't give them the incentive they need to come to your site. This is an example of what happens when you Google my own agency site, and something you have to think about for yourself as well. So when you Google IdeaGrow, you get this Google My Business panel, or Google Knowledge panel, that we can control in your local market. If you're a local business, everyone that has a physical address can have this, and you can show pictures of your business, your employees. You can share Google reviews and questions and answers. And then on your first page of results, if you're like us, we have our Facebook reviews there, our Glassdoor reviews. For agencies like us, Clutch is an important review source. These all appear in our first page of results. And we know that we can't count on anyone who Google's Idea Grove to come to the Idea Grove site. And so we want to make sure that they're seeing as many 4 and 5-star reviews and seeing those star ratings, and that's going to encourage them to come to our site. And so this is true for, uh, all businesses and all e-commerce businesses. And think about that. You may have heard the term on-site optimization or on-page optimization for Google. You need to think about on SERP optimization, SERP meaning search engine results pages, and you need to think of that first page of Google results for your business as being your second home page, and making sure that you're looking at what's popping up there and that it's doing things to engender trust so that people will then come to your website. So if we look at trust signals more broadly, there are 3 main types. The first type of trust signals is website trust signals, and these are the trust signals that encourage people to complete a purchase or take an action on your website. That might be today, it might be in the future, but the idea is they've come to your website and they're finding element make them want to continue down the path to buy from your brand. There's a lot of them. I have a blog post on the trustsignals.com website called 77 trust signals, and there are even more than that. But in terms of website trust signals, these are all things to think about. It doesn't mean you have to do all of them or focus on all of them, and some of them are not relevant to every business, but these are all examples of signals that you can send on your website to encourage trust and to build relationships with your website visitors. So these are things like, your top level domain. Most of us know intuitively that it's nice to have a .com domain, but there is data available where you can look at, you can A/B test and you can look at statistically the value of having a .com domain versus say a .live domain or a .buzz domain, or domains that are associated with spam or are not taken as seriously or don't have as much credibility. These are things to think about. If you've got a new e-commerce business, should I buy a .com domain? Should I buy an age domain? If I don't have, if there's not a .com that is the name of my business, should I settle for a something else? Well, for some businesses, a .ai or a .io might be a good solution. For other businesses, it might not be. But it's not a decision that you should take lightly. It's something that is worth taking the time and effort to get advice and do some research on. A lot of Lauren and I were talking about before the call that, in the case of a badge like a trusted site badge, in some cases an e-commerce store might say, oh, this badge is this color, but my site is this color or has this color palette. Is that a fit? The larger question that most e-commerce businesses and all businesses struggle with is having the basics in place of having professional design, clean navigation, page loading and site speed, having an experience in general in place that is very well done and solid. If you've got those things, an element like a trust badge from a source that is a credible source is always going to be an additive. It's not going to take away from your website experience for your visitors. What happens is many companies do not invest in their user experience in the way that they need to establish trust. These are all examples. I'm happy to discuss any of them, and you can find more about these on the site. We've talked about some of them, but just to talk more broadly about your website and how important it is to truly invest in the experience and to think about what the experience is telling people consciously or unconsciously. Just to give you some examples, in e-commerce businesses, it's more likely that you're going to be focused on this, but every website and every webmaster needs to think about the associations that your visitors make. If your pages are loading slowly, that's going to communicate that your customer service is poor. If you're slow to load, if your site is slow to load, you're likely to be considered slow to answer the phone, slow to respond to complaint, slow to deliver an order. If your navigation is difficult to understand, what the customer is going to think is that, and this could be conscious or unconscious, is that maybe you're not the vendor for them. Maybe you just don't understand what they want, or else why would it be so difficult for them to find what they're looking for? If you are not updating your content through your blog and just updating features on your product, or if customer stories and testimonials, if all those things are getting old and you're not updating them, how do I know that you're keeping your product up to date? How do I know that you're keeping up with trends? How do I know that you're truly innovative if you're projecting yourself in that way? Things like spelling and grammatical mistakes say so much more than many of us think they do in terms of what someone associates that with. That can be associated with shoddy workmanship. You know, a typo can be associated with, I don't think your product is very good, because what are you telling me about your attention to detail? Poor website SEO. We talked about Google visibility a little bit before. If you're not visible when folks are looking for you, it is suggesting that Google doesn't think your business or what you have to offer or have to say is very important. And so these are all examples of how you need to focus on these elements if you want to be taken seriously and if you want to be trusted as a brand. So those are examples of your website trust signals. Trust badges that we talked about at the outset are examples of website trust signals. They appear on your website, but they're not the kind. If you have trust signals on your website, they are useful for people who've found your website and are on your website, but first you have to get people to your website. So inbound trust signals are trust signals that drive visitors to your website via inbound marketing. And so examples of inbound trust signals are things like the Google My Business profile example for local businesses that I showed you. If you've got multiple physical locations, you can have a Google My Business profile in all of those localities. Google reviews, Glassdoor reviews. If you have a business where people are interacting with your employees through customer service, account management, or other means, increasingly Glassdoor reviews are very, are very visible. And I know that when I am looking at businesses to work with, I look at Glassdoor reviews because I want to make sure that the people that work for you are happy. If they're not, they're probably going to give me not the best customer service, right? My experience is not going to be great if you are not giving them a great experience as an employer. It's a lot of things, it's an example of something where you might think that you only have to worry about Glassdoor for recruiting, but that's not actually the case. It's thinking about all the things that are appearing high and are visible related to your brand when people are in the wild online, when they're not on your site, but they're finding out about you. um, uh, media coverage, press releases, byline articles, we've talked about those, influencer mentions, um, online forums, industry events. These are all examples of how people can find you elsewhere online, and depending on how you present yourself or impact how you're presented, they based on that can either come to your site or choose not to. So these are all examples of how you can impact people coming to your website as you think about this in the context of trust signals for your brand. And the third type of trust signal is an SEO trust signal. I call them SEO trust signals. I guess all of the trust signals we've talked about to this point are have implications in terms of Google searches. But SEO trust signals are specific types of signals that your visitors might not notice at all, but that Google uses to rank you in search. And so when we talk about SEO trust signals, this can include things like the age of your domain, the length of your registration. Because these things are valuable, there's a whole market, for example, for buying age domains because of the trust signals they send to Google. Most people that have familiarity with SEO or with building their presence in search know about backlinks and backlink quality and quantity. Things like your reputation history. Has your website ever been, or your domain, maybe from a previous owner even, been penalized? That's your reputation history. Google also looks at things like your branded search volume. If you are able through PR and other means to get more people to search for your brand, and your branded search volume increases as a result, that's going to tell Google, send the trust signal to Google that your brand overall should rank higher in search. Same for brand plus keyword searches. If your brand is associated with a particular product or industry or topic, and those are searched for together, your overall credibility and trust with Google for that topic is going to increase, and you will appear higher in results related to that. Things like the click-through rate when people go to your site, the mobile friendliness of your site, having architecture that Google doesn't perceive as being deceptive or having a lack of transparency. The fact that your website is able to engage visitors. You know, Google associates Google Analytics performance with how you rank in search. It looks at your social media engagement. So the idea that, oh, I have an e-commerce business. I'm focused on my website. I'm focused on ranking for some keywords. I don't have to think about social media. Well, Google's thinking about social media. These are all factors it cares about. The last point I would make here is that, you know, Google doesn't want to be too prescriptive in telling people what, what are the levers that are increase your rankings, right? It's always been kind of a black box in terms of talking about its methodology. So for example, in the case of domain age, Google has said, don't worry so much about it, not that important. Just focus on having good content and everything will be okay. The reality is these are all things that, whether Google acknowledges them publicly or doesn't, you need to think about. In the case of domain age, I'll give you an example. Google for some years now had basically discounted the importance of domain age and length of registration. However, recently, within the past several months, Google began, and you'll probably see this when you search online for just about anything. you'll see 3 dots next to a search result, and you click on those, and it will tell you, this is, Google has added something called about this result. When you click on those, it will tell you things like this, this brand or this search result has a Wikipedia listing. It will tell you if it is secure, if it has SSL. It will also tell you how long Google has been indexing the site. In other words, speaking to its domain age or length of registration. So these are all ways that Google is telling you that these indicators of trust are important to Google. So having a site that Google has identified and has been indexing for a long time, that's a trust indicator. That's a trust signal to Google. Having a secure site is a trust signal to Google. Having the third-party validation of being in Wikipedia is a trust signal to Google. And by the way, the main way that companies or brands get the validation of being in Wikipedia is through the third-party validation of media coverage. So these are all related, and they all together form the picture of how trusted your brand is or should be by those who are searching for a solution that your brand might be able to offer. So the bottom line of all of this is simply that we have to start with trust, not how do I get more leads? How do I get more people to come to my site? How do I, don't think so transactionally about getting people to your website as opposed to getting the right people to your website for the right reasons. Because people only buy from brands they trust. And trust signals, the way to think of them is that they're a shortcut for building that trust online. The great majority of people that see that as seen in logo from your media coverage, it's the fact that you have a logo from that media publication that's the trust signal. Most of them are not going to go back and read the article that the New York Times wrote about you. They're going to see that New York Times logo. And that's why, in the same way that a trusted site seal is sending that signal that your website can be trusted, this is what a media logo or a testimonial quote or an award in your industry, these are all examples of signals that a buyer from off your site to on your site is following this trail to come to the conclusion that they want to do business with you or not. And that's really what I think it's a good framework which to think about how you build a marketing program that's going to reach the people you're trying to reach at all the relevant touch points in a way that'll get them kind of to take that next step until they're ready to make a purchase. So trust badges are really, for an e-commerce site, the first step on the journey of building a brand trust through trust signals, but think of it as being part of a continuum in order to reach people at whatever stage they're at in order to come to your site and through your site ultimately to become a customer and to become a happy customer. So when we talk about trust, talk about trust signals, you can think of it in terms of these are trust signals on your website. These are trust signals that you find inbound. These are trust signals that are important to Google. Another way, and you can kind of go through, I mentioned I have a blog post that has 77 of them, and you can go through and look at all 77 of these and look at which ones are relevant to you to implement. But another way to organize your thoughts around it, we use the term and the framework grow with trust at Idea Grove. And when we talk about this grow with trust framework, we talk about 5 elements of it. The first being third-party validation. So we talked about customers and how showing that you have happy customers who will say good things about you and that they apply to the same use cases that you're that you're trying to attract visitors with. That's so important. Third-party validation organizations like from Better Business Bureau to awards and so forth. These are all examples of third-party validation. Now, customer reviews are another example. Now you have reputation management. You can think of third-party validation and reputation management as kind of two sides of the same coin, right? If you are out there working to get positive reviews, you're asking folks for reviews, they're leaving good reviews, you're getting this kind of positive third-party validation. You also have to be ready for negative reviews, and you have to be ready to respond to those. And this is true of negative media coverage or any kind of negative side to this kind of third-party commentary on your brand. If you're not focused on the reputation management piece by having a system in place to quickly make amends with dissatisfied customers or respond to negative reviews, to manage any media coverage, then it's almost like you're kind of got a you're sailing off in a leaky boat. You have to be able to manage anything negative while you're focused on the positive, or you can kind of lose all the value of the third-party validation you're working so hard to achieve. User experience, by that we're talking about your website, not only your website and the things that we discussed there, like your design, your content and so forth, your trust badges, but all of your owned media. In other words, what we see sometimes is you might have a website that you've worked very hard to be authentic, sincere, transparent, but maybe your email marketing comes off as spammy or doesn't really connect with the kind of identity that you're trying to communicate on your website. That's that lack of consistency is going to truly undermine your brand in a way that is not going to be worth whatever short-term results you think you might get from sending out a spammy email campaign. This is the kind of thing that where being who you are and who you want to be and aspire to be as a brand has to be true at every touch point in which you're extending your identity, or else people don't know who you are and therefore they just simply won't trust you. Your search presence is, like we talked about, Google is so important today in terms of not only, hey, am I going to come up if someone searches for a particular keyword, but what's going to come up when someone searches for my brand, or knowing that 70% of people that are doing a Google search are never going to click at all. Am I able to have my messages appear on Google search results pages through featured snippets, which are those kind of explanatory details that might come up. Let's say you have a product that you're selling and you've written a blog post or you have content on your website that helps a potential customer with to solve a problem. This is the kind of thing that can come up when someone searches in a featured snippet. It's think of it coming at it from a PR perspective. It's almost like getting a great media placement, because that's something that whether or not they click through your site, you've made that impression that you're a brand that they can trust to help them solve that problem. So think overall about your search presence beyond simply how by hook or by crook do I get people to come to my site. Think about the impression within Google's universe that you're leaving on those that are doing that are searching for things relevant to your brand. And finally, thought leadership. Thought leadership is something that I think a lot of people associate only with B2B brands, but I think that every brand today, um, thinking in terms of helping rather than selling, which is ultimately what thought leadership is about, is a relevant, um, uh, it, it's a relevant tool that you should use. It makes everything else we've talked about and everything else on this slide more valuable, because people don't want to hear you talking about yourself and your product and how great it is all the time. They want to hear what you have to say about them, about their problems, about their issues and challenges. And if, to the extent that you have things to say and offer that are helpful to them, that's going to draw them in. And that's going to get them to a point where they're curious about you and your product. That's thought leadership. And there's no brand, a B2C brand, a B2B brand, there's no brand that shouldn't be thinking that way online today, when everyone is doing their product research online and no one starts with looking for some bottom of the funnel product message. They're looking for higher level thinking, higher level problem solving, and things that don't have to do with you and your brand. That has to come later in the process and later down the funnel. That's really all I had to go through today. I think the way to think about this big picture is, if you think about and have thought about trust badges or trust signals as being that seal on your checkout page, it is that, but it can be a lot more than that as well. Everyone is strapped for time today. Everyone is doing their research online, but they're trying to get from point A to point B to point C as soon as they can. So if you're able to think about every point along the journey of your potential prospects off your site and on your site, and the ways that you can assure them and build trust with them along the way, you're going to be in a position of attracting more customers and getting more customers to convert. So hopefully this has helped you think a little bit about it. It's a lot when you think about all these different kinds of trust signals, but hopefully it's giving you a framework for thinking about this in a way that you can kind of get your head around it and think about what of these kinds of trust signals will be helpful to your brand to attract and convert more customers.
Thanks, Scott. That was great, really informative. If anyone has any questions or comments for Scott, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A. I do have one question here that came through for you, Scott. I'm seeing more and more sites using cookie banners upon arriving to a site. Do you think consumers are starting to view this, or will eventually view this, as another type of trust signal on websites?
Yes, I think that people understand that, particularly with all the attention that have come to Facebook and the big tech companies of the last 3 or 4 years around privacy, and with the regulations that have come into place in Europe and California and elsewhere, I think that people are thinking about it, and the fact that you are thinking about your visitors, privacy and security. It's a very hot topic and a very important topic for a lot of people. So I definitely think it's increasingly a trust signal, and that other related topics like being ADA compliant, making sure that your site works for people that are differently able to. These are all examples that not only apply to that individual, but to everyone who comes to your site. if you're thinking about this issue or this audience, you're more likely to think about mine also. And it definitely builds trust and something that I wouldn't worry about, having to get another, opt-in or having to get that consent. It's more important that you are getting people to see that you care.
Yeah, I agree. Good points there. I know you touched on this a little bit, but another question here is just around the aesthetics of a trust badge. And obviously design is one of the number one concerns to a lot of merchants when they're building out their online store. If my designers are concerned, I want to add a trust badge to the site, but my designers are giving me some pushback because of the aesthetics, because it doesn't necessarily match the look and feel of our site. How do you recommend we handle that, or we kind of push for our designers to move forward with adding a trust badge or a trust symbol of sorts to our site?
Well, ultimately the designers can have opinions, the business owner can have opinions, but the only opinion that really matters is that of visitors. So there are very low cost ways to do A/B testing to find out if adding a trust seal that's, say it's green, and there's reasons why a trust signal would be green, because green communicates positive things. If you A/B test whether you're going to get more clicks or conversions or more of the actions you're looking for when you have it rather than you don't, that's really what you're looking to do. If you built a site that has a consistent brand standards, a consistent color palette, if all those things are in place, then adding a seal from a third party that's a respected third party source that does not fit that palette is not a negative. It's not something that would take away from your branding. It's a positive. What can happen is if you try to make everything fit within a palette, it can actually start to blend together when it comes to something like a trust badge. But the bottom line is, look, they work, but the best way to convince someone who's not sure, and that can be the business owner or the designer or whoever the stakeholder is just run a simple A/B test, and you'll find out for yourself whether adding a banner improved conversions, improved the actions that you're trying to get more of.
Yeah, great point. And on that end, here at Trusted Site, we do a lot of A/B testing with our existing clients to help optimize the placements of the trust marks, as well as prospects who have those exact concerns. And more times than not, we repeatedly see the trust badges improving performance and improving conversions on a site. So definitely recommend testing if that's an interest to you. Those are all the questions I have. So Scott, again, really appreciate your time. If you're interested in connecting with Scott, you can find him on LinkedIn. You can visit his agency website, ideagrove.com, or his really informative website around trust signals, trustsignals.com, and also keep an eye out for his book, also called Trust Signals. Thank you everyone for joining. Like I said, we will be following up with the recording and the slides, and please feel free to reach out to us. We will send our contact information in the follow-up email. So please feel free to reach out with any questions or guidance we can provide. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.